Welcome back, fellow internet adventurers. Get ready for another wild ride through Reddit's strangest stories. We're diving deep into the internet's quirkiest corners. Grab your popcorn and join us on this adventure. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Let's get started. She got caught bragging about tricking me to our friends, so I made sure she has no friends left. I filed for divorce and took everything. I've always hated when bad things seem to happen to good people, but that seems to be the way things go. When you go out of your way not to hurt anyone else, people seem to take that as a free excuse to treat you however they want, and they'll keep doing it if you let them get away with it. Well, I'm not letting her get away with it this time. Let's make things clear. I'm not some nice guy who's mad because I've been done wrong. I'm pissed all the way off because someone I loved has been playing me for a fool for years. I'm a 29-year-old male who's been married to my wife, Susan, 28, for 3 years. All that time, I thought our relationship was perfect. Sure, we had some rough patches, but over time, our relationship smoothed out, and I thought we were golden. Our friends even made comments about how they were jealous of our relationship. I believed it too. I thought I'd hit the jackpot and found my soulmate. We met at a party that a mutual friend, Ethan, was hosting. I knew him from work, and she knew him from college. He didn't try to set us up or anything like that. We both happened to run into each other at the party, got to talking, and things took off from there. She seemed to be everything I wanted in a partner. We shared some interests, so I didn't hesitate to ask her on a date. She agreed, and after another date, 2 years later, we were married. We don't have any kids, though we were starting to discuss it. She's a kindergarten teacher and has always loved kids, but the timing had just never been right for us. She didn't make much money from her job, but I made enough to cover all our needs. I'm a senior developer with a software company, so I earn a lot, but I job hop pretty often. Not quite enough stability for raising a child. You need to know that Susan's relationship with her sister, Rachel, isn't the best. They don't get along very well. I'm not sure what it is. Call it sibling rivalry, envy, or conflicting personalities. They end up fighting more often than not. The funny thing is that they have these moments of peace when they get along for a while. Sometimes it lasts a few days. Sometimes it's a month or two. But they inevitably find something to get mad at each other about. I tried to keep myself as uninvolved in those spats as I could. I couldn't see any wisdom in getting in the middle of their sibling drama. I just trusted them to resolve the issues like they always did. I never expected that I would end up dragged into their fight in a way that would ruin my life as I knew it. It started when the two of them were having another disagreement over God knows what. This time it was worse than usual, and Rachel seemed to be the offended party. And I mean really offended. My wife wouldn't give me any details about what had happened, which was odd because she usually talked my ear off about this stuff. They gave me the impression that Susan really was guilty of whatever her sister was mad about. As usual, I didn't concern myself with the incident. I figured they'd get over it like they always did. But then Rachel called me out of nowhere one day. That was odd because the two of us don't really talk all that much. She didn't even give me the chance to get out a hello before she said something along the lines of, "Remember the pregnancy scare you guys had when you were dating?" She made it up. Hell of a way to open a conversation, I thought. I thought I'd misheard her at first, so I asked her to repeat herself, and she said the exact same thing again. I was quiet for a moment while I tried to process what she just said. My first thought was that it was a bad joke before I landed on it being an underhanded lie to get revenge on her sister. I made my voice as firm as I could and said, "That's not funny, Rachel." She didn't change her tone even a little and insisted that she was telling the truth. She was right that there had been a pregnancy scare, and I wasn't too surprised that her sister knew about it. But I couldn't believe that she had made it up. What reason could she possibly have for that? I asked Rachel, and she told me that Susan had been worried that we were done, and she tried to baby trap me into the relationship. She said Susan had told her that she wasn't ready to lose the lifestyle I provided for her. At that point, the story was starting to make a little more sense. The pregnancy scare had brought the two of us closer together while we tried to deal with it, but I still had trouble believing it. It didn't seem like something I could see her doing. I pointed out that there had been a positive test, but Rachel didn't miss a beat before saying Susan faked it. She said there were fake pregnancy tests she could get online that always showed a positive. I'd never heard of that before, but a Google search later on showed it was true. They're only like $5 too. It's just another thing for guys to watch out for, I guess. I had never considered the possibility of her making it up. At the time, our relationship had hit a rough patch. I hadn't seriously considered breaking up with her, but it was a real possibility. Then we had the pregnancy scare, complete with a positive test, and we started focusing on working through our differences. Later, we found out that she wasn't really pregnant, and we chalked it up to a defective test. I'd always thought of the pregnancy scare as an incident that had strengthened our relationship, but now I was starting to see that it was more malicious than I'd expected. Rachel took my silence for disbelief and said she would send me proof. Then she ended the call. I stared at my phone, waiting for a text from her, dreading every second. I wanted to know if I'd really been tricked, but I was scared of what I would find out. If she really lied to me, I didn't see how our relationship could recover. What else could she have lied about? It took about 3 minutes for Rachel to send over the damning evidence. There were messages between her and my sister going back years to when they were dating. They laid out details of her plan, how she was scared that we were going to break up and that she had a plan to fix everything. She faked a pregnancy test and gloated to her sister that her plan worked. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My first instinct was to go and ask Susan if this was true, but I knew she'd deny it. I figured I would need to do so with solid proof in hand. I was angrier than I'd ever been, but I forced myself to think rationally. If she lied about this, what else could she have hidden? As it turned out, it was a lot. For about a week after that, I did my best to play the part of the oblivious husband. It wasn't easy, and she could tell something was wrong. There was no more intimacy between us, and I wasn't as warm toward her as I usually was. She was bothered by it, but whenever she asked, I just said it was work stress. In the meantime, I took every opportunity one could to go through all of her messages, everything. Social media, emails, text messages. Whenever her laptop was unattended or her phone was lying on the bed while she was in the shower, I'd take the chance to go through her messages. I was thorough too. If she was lying so early on in our relationship, then I had to search through years of messages. I found what I was looking for in her DMs and texts with 2 of her closest friends, Stephanie and Melissa. I didn't even have to go further back than a few months before I found what I was looking for. My wife was having an affair. About a year ago, she told her friends that she was tired of our relationship, but couldn't give up the financial security I provided for her. She mentioned a guy, James, who made her feel alive and excited. He was the father of one of the kids she taught last year. She wanted to leave me for him, but he didn't make as much as I did. I felt sick, but I had to force myself to keep scrolling. I needed to know everything. A few months down the line, she was laughing to her friends about how she'd managed to trick me. She'd been screwing around with this guy for months without me figuring anything out. They joked about how I was oblivious and called me her safety net. I had to stop reading after a while. This wasn't the woman I thought I'd married. This person was cold and calculating, and she had been since before we got married. She was making a game out of my pain. I was surprised to realize that I was more angry than hurt. I wasn't going to just sit and take this. I stomped over to her, threw her phone in her lap, and demanded that she tell me everything about James. She didn't attempt to deny it because the evidence was sitting right there between us. She didn't say anything at first until I shouted at her to explain herself. She started tearing up and said that she'd never meant to hurt me. Our relationship had started feeling safe and boring to her, and she just wanted some excitement. James didn't mean anything to her. She'd always planned to break things off with him eventually. All of the anger poured out of me after I heard that. I hate to admit it, but I spent 10 minutes screaming at her about how stupid that was and how she'd ruined our relationship. I brought up what her sister had told me and pointed out that she'd always been a liar and a user. She was out there crying and saying we could still save our relationship. I told her we were done and that she needed to pack her stuff and get out. It took another hour of screaming before she finally got her things together and left. She said she'd be back in the morning so I could cool down and we could talk things through, but I wasn't waiting that long. I was already looking up divorce lawyers. If she thinks she can fool me and still keep her safety net, then she has a cold reality check coming. The audacity of faking a pregnancy to manipulate me into staying, then carrying on an affair while laughing behind my back with her friends. It's like she believed she was untouchable. Here's the thing. People like her always think they're smarter than everyone else. They underestimate the people they're deceiving, assuming their lies will never catch up with them. She thought wrong. Update. Susan really did come back the next morning, but I hadn't cooled down at all. I was on my way out to meet up with a divorce lawyer when she came up to me, pleading for a chance to talk things out. I didn't slow my pace as I walked to my car. I told her that there was nothing to talk about without my lawyer present. That shut her up, and I took the opportunity to tell her that I was going through with filing for divorce. Then the tears started again. I didn't let them bother me. I knew she didn't actually feel guilty. She just felt bad that she'd been caught and that she was losing her lifeline. I got into my car and drove off. She called my number a dozen times on my way to the lawyer's office, but I just let her ring. There was no need to talk to her because she had no chance of talking me out of what was coming next. She was served with the divorce papers when they were ready. She was still unhappy about that, but this time she was angry instead of sad. Now she was saying that the failure of our relationship was my fault. According to her, people cheat in relationships every day, but they need communication to overcome it. It was apparently my fault that we were getting a divorce because I wasn't willing to compromise. That just made me madder. That was a new height of dodging accountability. We had another argument that ended with me storming off, but I knew I wasn't going to be happy with just getting a divorce anymore. I wanted a clean break from her. But now she was victim blaming me and turning me into the bad guy. I wanted to make her pay. I remembered her friends laughing at me in their group chat and knew how I was going to do it. I knew it was just a matter of time before she started spreading more lies to her friends, and I was going to make sure she didn't have any friends left before that happened. Over the years, she talked a lot of crap about her friends behind their backs. A lot of it had been verbal, but some of it had been texted. So, I texted each of her friends everything she had said about them, every dirty little detail, every snide remark she had ever made. I included screenshots of what she had said where I could. I also threw in the details of her infidelity for good measure. The replies started flooding in immediately. Disbelief, anger, shock. None of them seemed ready to give her the benefit of the doubt. Why would they? She'd said some nasty things about these people behind their backs. It didn't take half an hour before Susan confronted me about it. She was livid. Her friends were all enraged and were on her case about things she'd said to me about them. Some of them swore they would never talk to her again. Others said they were glad she was getting divorced. She accused me of being petty, vindictive, and cruel. I didn't care. This wasn't just about revenge for the sake of revenge. Well, part of it was. But I also wanted to expose her for what she was. If she was going to lie, cheat, and use people, then she didn't deserve all the friends she was pretending to cherish. I told her she could save her outrage for someone who would believe her BS. I found out from some of her friends that she tried to salvage her image, just like I predicted. She painted me as a bitter husband trying to destroy her reputation, but none of them believed her. She could try to revise things all she wanted, but they'd all seen what she'd said in writing. On top of that, they had seen her talk badly about other people. She wasn't able to win any of them over. The divorce was brutal. We both fought viciously to get as much as we could, but in the end, things mostly went my way. I had proof of infidelity, which goes a long way in my state. We didn't have kids, and she had her own job, so I managed to get off without alimony. Her job didn't pay too well, but in the eyes of the judge, it was good enough since she wouldn't end up poor without my income. She didn't have a support system either. Her parents were the only people I knew who were still talking to her after the divorce. From what Rachel told me, they were disappointed in Susan too, but they couldn't abandon her like everyone else. Rachel wanted nothing to do with Susan, especially after I'd shown her some of the things Susan had said about her behind her back. I realized just how bad things had gotten for Susan about 2 weeks after the divorce. That was when I got a visit from my ex-wife. She'd been calling me frequently after the divorce was finalized, but I never picked up. I had nothing to talk to her about. After all, she'd lied to me constantly and used me for my money while sleeping around behind my back. I was still bitter toward her, but I let her in to hear her out. It seemed like she had hit rock bottom. She had no friends, and her safety net had been yanked out from under her. She started by apologizing, but those might as well have been empty words to me. There was no reason to believe she felt apologetic for any reason other than karma hitting her square in the face. I was already regretting talking to her just because of how boring it was listening to her whine. Once she was done with the apology, she started pleading with me to take her back. She said she'd realized she'd screwed up and was ready to change. She claimed she didn't care about the money anymore. She just wanted to fix things between us. I asked her about James, and she went quiet for a while. She said things were over with him and that she was dedicated to winning me back so we could have a fresh start. I told her she was free to have her fresh start with whoever she wanted, but I wasn't going to be involved. The tears started again, which irritated me. I'd seen that move before and I was tired of it. She'd start crying to manipulate me and make me feel sorry for her when she was all out of moves. I wasn't going to entertain this any further. I guided her back to the door and told her to move on with her life, whether that was with James or whatever poor sucker she found next. She tried one last attempt, telling me that I was the only person she'd ever truly loved. I didn't answer. I just closed and locked the door behind her. That was the last time I saw her. I'm dedicated to going no contact with her. I don't even talk with her family anymore. I don't feel any pity for her or any regret about what I did. I reclaimed my self-worth after she had taken advantage of me for so long. I secured my finances and protected what I owned. More importantly, I exposed her for what she truly was and stopped her from twisting the narrative to her own advantage. After all that, I've made a point to focus on myself. I gave selflessly to her for so many years that I'd forgotten to work on myself. I had been sinking myself into my career and self-development. I've also taken time to reconnect with my hobby of drone piloting. The experience sucked in a big way, but I'm just thankful that my eyes were open to the truth in time. I guess better late than never. So anyway, thanks for now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.